I'm 67 years old now, and if you'd told me a decade ago that remarrying in my late 50s would almost cost me the cattle ranch my grandfather homesteaded, and that I'd spent 40 years expanding, I'd have poured you another coffee and told you to stop watching so many soap operas. But here I am, still sitting on my porch overlooking the same rolling pastures in eastern Montana, the same herd grazing under the big sky, and the only reason it's all still mine is because when I married Harlan Whitaker, I never once let on that the ranch wasn't some old family holding with cousins and trusts and shared stakes. I made damn sure everyone believed it was complicated, communal, and definitely not just sitting in my name alone. My name is Clara. Redmond always has been, even after the wedding. I grew up on this place. My grandfather filed the original claim in 1919, right after the Great War. My father added another section in the 50s, and when he and Mom passed in 89, the ranch fell to me. I was 32, unmarried, no kids, and everyone in the county figured I'd sell it to some corporate outfit from Texas. Instead, I mortgaged what I could, bought out the grazing leases on the neighboring BLM land, and turned a struggling outfit into a solid third-generation operation. By 2005 we ran 800 head, had a small feedlot contract, and sold grass-fed beef direct to restaurants in Denver and Seattle. I built the new calving barn with my own hands and a crew of 3. Fought off droughts, market crashes, and the bank more times than I care to count. Every fence post, every water tank, every registered brand mine. I earned it the hard way, alone. By the time I hit 58, things were stable. I had good help, a foreman named Javier who'd been with me 18 years, and enough put away that I didn't have to work sunup to sundown anymore. But the house felt empty. My younger sister had moved to Bosman with her family, and the evenings were long. That's when Harlan came along. He showed up at the county stock sale in Billings, bidding on some yearlings. Tall, silver-haired, retired Air Force pilot turned commercial real estate broker from Colorado, widower, charming in that quiet, confident way. He bought me coffee after the auction, asked smart questions about grass management and rotational grazing. A month later, he was driving up on weekends. He listened to my stories about the lean years, brought me books on sustainable ranching, even helped move pipe one hot July afternoon without complaining. I fell harder than I expected. At 60, I didn't think that was still possible. We dated for 10 months. His 2 grown sons from his first marriage lived in Denver and Boulder. They visited once, polite enough, but I caught the older one, Bryce, eyeing the corrals and the new equipment shed like he was running numbers in his head. Harlan proposed on the ridge above the north pasture at sunset, with a simple gold band. I said yes, but before we set a date, I called my lawyer, old Tom Hargrove, who'd handled my father's estate and every loan I'd ever signed. Tom insisted on a prenup. Harlan signed it without much fuss, though I saw the flicker in his eyes. The agreement was ironclad. Anything I owned before the marriage stayed mine. The ranch, the cattle, the water rights, the equipment, all separate property. What I didn't tell Harlan, or his boys, or even my sister, was the full truth about ownership. I let slip in conversation that the place had been in the family for generations, and there were always cousins and old leases to sort out. When Bryce asked directly how many sections we ran, I said, it's a patchwork, some deeded, some leased, some family trusts. Complicated. When the younger son, Ethan, asked about succession, I smiled and said, Tom handles all that estate stuff. Too boring to talk about over dinner. We married quietly at the ranch, under the cottonwoods by the creek. Javier stood as my witness. Harlan's sons toasted us, called me stepmom, which felt strange but not terrible. He moved in. For the first year, it was peaceful. He liked riding fence with me, learned the names of the dogs, even started helping with the books a little. I thought maybe this was what late-life companionship was supposed to feel like. Then the cracks showed. It started small. Harlan began suggesting we modernize, bring in investors, maybe turn part of the land into a guest ranch for city folks. We could lease the back 40 for solar, he said one night. Passive income. I told him the land was tied up in ways that made that impossible. He pressed. Then Bryce started visiting more often, always with questions about appraisals, production numbers, debt load. Ethan sent links to articles about monetizing family ranches and exit strategies. Harlan started sliding documents across the kitchen table, updated beneficiary forms, powers of attorney. A new will he wanted us to do together for simplicity. I read every line. Most were harmless. Some weren't. One gave him joint control of the operating account. Another referenced a partnership interest in the ranch. I never signed. Year 2, I came home early from a vet call and found Bryce and Harlan in my office, my locked office with the file drawer open, papers everywhere. They startled like kids caught stealing cookies, just looking for the latest grazing lease, Harlan said smoothly. Thought we could review it together. That night I called Tom. He ran a quiet title check. Someone had filed quitclaim deeds with the county-forged signatures. Mine, transferring fractional interests to Harlan and then to his sons. The forgeries were sloppy. My C looked nothing like that. But they'd been recorded. Tom said, "This is felony fraud, Clara. We can stop it cold, but it's going to get ugly." I didn't divorce him right away. Instead, I hired a discreet investigator out of Billings. The report came back thick. Harlan's first wife hadn't died in a freak hiking accident like he'd said. She'd had a stroke, spent her last year in assisted living, and somehow all her assets, house investments, a small ranch in Wyoming, transferred to him 6 months before she passed. Her daughter had contested it, called it undue influence, settled quietly. His first wife's sister had been cut out entirely. There were whispers about a second relationship, a woman in her 60s who de-signed over her cabin and land before deciding to move to assisted living permanently. I had proof, emails, witness statements, a pattern. I waited 3 more months, gathering more. Then I invited everyone for a special anniversary barbecue. Harlan's boys flew in. My sister came, Javier and his wife too, and I invited 2 other guests, the investigator, and the detective from the county sheriff's office who'd taken my fraud report. We ate ribs, drank iced tea. Then, as the sun dropped, I stood up. "Harlan, Bryce, Ethan, I want to thank you for joining us. But this isn't just a party. It's an explanation." I laid out the forged deeds, played a recording of Bryce bragging, in a voicemail to his brother, about how easy it'll be once Dad gets her to sign the new will. I introduced the detective gentleman. "You're looking at charges: forgery, attempted theft by deception, elder financial abuse." Harlan went pale. Bryce tried to leave. The detective told him to sit. Ethan started crying, claiming he didn't know the details. Harlan looked at me and whispered, "I thought we were partners." "We were never partners," I said. "This ranch was never yours. It was never family property. It was mine. Every blade of grass, every cow, every dollar, I scraped together. And you thought you could just take it." The arrests happened right there on the porch. Handcuffs in the golden light. The criminal case dragged on a year. Bryce and Ethan took pleas, probation, restitution. Harlan went to trial, convicted on all counts, plus a reopened investigation into his first wife's transfer. He got 9 years at 69. Good luck. The divorce was quick. Prenup held. He got a suitcase and whatever he brought. His boys lost their share of whatever he'd promised them. Today the ranch is big, a 920 head, new solar well pumps. And my niece is learning the books, thinking about coming home after college. Javier got a raise and a stake in the profits. I still ride out at dawn most days. Still check the herd myself. I never remarried. Probably never will. But I tell this story to every widow or divorcee who asks me about dating in our years. Keep your mouth shut about the full value. Watch the red flags. And if someone starts asking too many questions about what's theirs, after you're gone, trust that old rancher's instinct. Love is fine. But this land, this life I built, that's sacred. And I protect what's mine. Always have. Always will. I'm 71 now, and on this crisp December morning in 2025, with snow dusting the north pasture like powdered sugar on a fresh biscuit, I can still feel the ache in my knees from years of riding fence and the quiet satisfaction of knowing the Redmond Ranch is exactly as it was when my grandfather first staked it out more than a century ago. If someone had told me back in 2015, when I was 62 and lonely enough to consider companionship again, that letting a man move into my house would nearly cost me everything, every deeded section, every water right, every head of black Angus I'd fought to keep through blizzards and market crashes, I'd have laughed, handed them a cup of coffee, and told them to go talk to the wind. But that's precisely what almost happened, and the only reason I'm still here, watching the sun rise over the same unbroken horizon my family has guarded for generations, is because when I married Harlan Whitaker, I never once told him or his 2 greedy sons that this ranch was mine, solely mine. No family trusts, no distant cousins with claims, no complicated leases, just my name on every title, every loan payoff, every brand registration. My name is Clara Redmond. I was born in the old ranch house in 1954. The same year my father added the east section after a brutal winter that killed half the herd. Grandpa had homesteaded the original 640 acres in 1919, right after he came back from France with a limp and a determination that no one would ever take what was his again. Dad expanded it to 3 sections by the time he died in '89. I was 35, single, no children, and the county buzzed with predictions that I'd sell to some absentee oilmen from Texas. Instead, I took over. I borrowed against everything I could, bought grazing leases on BLM land that neighbors had let lapse, and built the place up. By 2000 we were running 600 cow-calf pairs, selling grass-fed beef to high-end restaurants in Denver and Billings. By 2010, we'd added a small feedlot partnership and direct-to-consumer sales. I put up the new calving barn during a recession when banks would untouch me, used my own savings. Worked nights welding the steel myself with Javier, my foreman since '92. Every barbed wire strand, every windmill, every registered bull mine. I earned it with sweat, sleepless nights during calving, and more than a few trips to the bank begging for extensions. By the time I turned 60, the ranch was worth north of $12 million. Maybe more, with the mineral rights we'd quietly leased out. I had Javier running day-to-day, a solid crew, and enough cash flow that I could breathe. But the house echoed. My sister had moved to Bosman years earlier. Weekends were long, evenings longer. That's when Harlan appeared. He came to the county stock sale in Billings in the spring of 2015. Tall, silver-haired, retired Air Force pilot, turned real estate broker from Denver. Widower. He bid on some yearlings, then bought me coffee afterward. Asked about rotational grazing, drought-resistant grasses, the way we managed water in dry years. Smart questions. He started driving up on weekends, helped me move pipe one scorching July day without complaint. Brought me books on regenerative ranching. Listened when I talked about fighting the bank in the '90s. We dated 10 months. His sons, Bryce, 44, investment banker in Denver, and Ethan, 40, real estate developer in Boulder, visited once early on. Polite. But I caught Bryce scanning the corrals, the new equipment shed, the irrigated hayfields like he was mentally tallying acreage. Harlan proposed on the ridge overlooking the north pasture at sunset, with a plain gold band. I said yes, but before any date was set, I called Tom Hargrove, my attorney since Dad died. Tom had handled every loan, every lease, every will I'd ever touched. He insisted on a prenup. Harlan signed it, though I saw the brief tightening of his jaw. The agreement was clear. Premarital assets stayed separate. The ranch, the cattle, the equipment, the water rights all mine. What I never told Harlan, or his boys, or even my sister, was the truth about ownership. Over Sunday dinners, when they asked how many sections we ran, I'd say, it's a patchwork, some deeded, some leased from the BLM, some old family arrangements, complicated. When Bryce pressed about appraisals or revenue, I'd deflect. Tom handles the details, boring stuff. When Ethan asked about succession planning, I smiled and said, we're still figuring that out. No rush. We married quietly in the fall of 2016, under the big cottonwoods by the creek. Javier stood as my witness. Harlan's sons toasted us, called me Clara with careful smiles. He moved in with his books, his golf clubs, his quiet routines. For the first 18 months, it was almost good. He rode fence with me, learned the dogs' names, even helped with calving one spring. I thought maybe this was what late-life partnership looked like, someone to share the quiet evenings, the coffee at dawn. Then, the shift came, slow at first, like a storm building on the horizon. It started with suggestions. Harlan began talking modernization. We could lease part of the back 44 wind turbines, he said one night. Passive income, no work. I told him the leases were tied up. He pressed, then Bryce started coming more often, always with questions. Production numbers, debt load, recent appraisals. Ethan sent articles about monetizing legacy ranches, exit strategies for aging owners. Harlan began sliding papers across the kitchen table, beneficiary updates, powers of attorney, a joint will for simplicity. I read every word. Some were innocent, others weren't. One gave him signature authority on the operating account. Another referenced a partnership interest in the land. I never signed. In year 3, I came home early from a vet call in Miles City and found Harlan and Bryce in my office, the locked office with the file drawer open, papers spread out. They jumped, just looking for the latest BLM grazing permit, Harlan said smoothly. Thought we'd review it together. That night I called Tom. He ran a quiet title search. Someone had filed quitclaim deeds with the county recorder, forged signatures that looked vaguely like mine. transferring fractional interests first to Harlan, then to his sons. The forgeries were amateurish. My capital C never looped that way, but they'd been recorded, Tom said. Felony fraud, Clara. We can quash this, but it'll get ugly, public, messy. I didn't confront him yet. Instead, I hired a private investigator out of Billings, an old friend from my real estate days when I needed background on buyers. The report came back thick as a phone book. Harlan's first wife hadn't died in a hiking accident like he'd claimed. She'd had a massive stroke, spent her last year in care, and somehow her entire estate, a house in Denver, investments, a small Wyoming spread, transferred to him 7 months before she passed. Her daughter contested it, alleged undue influence and forged documents. Settled out of court. The daughter got a token payment. There was another woman before that, a Colorado widow in her late 60s who de-signed over her cabin and acreage before moving to assisted living permanently. Her son had tried to fight it. Same lawyers blocked him. A pattern. 2 women, 2 estates quietly transferred before death. Now me, healthy, sharp, and sitting on millions in land. I gathered more emails between Harlan and Bryce discussing how to structure the transfer once she signs the new POA, texts about waiting for the right health scare. I had proof. I waited for more months, building the case. Then I planned the confrontation. I invited everyone for a special anniversary barbecue in late summer 2020. Harlan's sons flew in. My sister came up from Bozeman, Javier and his wife, and I invited extras, the investigator, Detective Ramirez from the sheriff's office, and quietly, the daughter of Harlan's first wife, who'd agreed to come after I explained what was happening. We ate brisket, drank iced tea under the cottonwoods. As the sun dropped behind the Bull Mountains, I stood. Harlan, Bryce, Ethan, this isn't just a party. It's an explanation. I laid out the forged deeds on the picnic table, played the recordings, introduced Detective Ramirez. Gentlemen, forgery, attempted theft by deception, financial elder abuse. The county attorney has the file. Harlan went white. Bryce tried to bolt. The detective stopped him. Ethan started crying, claiming he didn't know the full plan. Harlan looked at me and whispered, "We were building something together." "We were never building anything," I said. "This ranch was never yours. It was never family land. It was mine. Every acre, every cow, every drop of water I fought for. You thought you could walk in, charm me, forge a few papers, and take it." The arrests happened on the porch as the stars came out, handcuffs glinting in the porch light. Chaos, Bryce yelling about lawyers, Ethan throwing his brother under the bus, Harlan silent with pure hatred. The case took 14 months. Bryce and Ethan took pleas, probation, restitution, community service. Harlan went to trial, convicted on fraud, forgery, conspiracy, and elder abuse charges. The judge reopened the old cases. New evidence tied him to suspicious circumstances around the first wife's death. He got 11 years at 68, effectively life. The divorce was swift. Prenup held ironclad. Harlan left with what he brought in a U-Haul. His sons lost whatever he'd promised them. Today, the ranch runs 950 head. We added solar pumps, regenerative practices that have improved the grass. My niece, fresh out of Montana State with an AG degree, is learning the books and talking about staying. Javier got a profit share and a raise. He's family now. I still ride out at first light most days, still check the herd myself, still feel the land under me like an old friend. I never remarried, don't plan to, but I tell this story to every widow, every single woman over 60 who asks about dating these days. Get the prenup, keep the full truth close, watch for the questions about money, the sudden interest in modernizing, the papers slid across the table, and trust that instinct honed over decades of protecting what's yours. Love is a fine thing, but this land, this legacy, it's sacred. I built it, I guarded it, and I'll leave it stronger than I found it, because I wasn't there, Mark. I was there reckoning. And every morning when I step onto this porch, coffee in hand, watching the cattle move across the pasture under that endless Montana sky, I know one thing for certain, it's still mine. Every blade of grass, every breath of wind, every tomorrow. And it's going to stay that way.